Valkyr's name as a stand would be 9 Inch Nails, named after the American rock band of the same name, a stand that is the embodiment of ferocious rage. 9 Inch Nails is a close-range stand that viciously tears its opponents apart with, as its name suggests, its long, razor-sharp talons. It also displays some sentience, as it longs to seek vengeance on those that tortured it for experimentation. As such, this anger is often used to give itself more strength and stamina, even preventing death if its rage is high enough. The most iconic aspect of 9 Inch Nails is its battle cry, which it lets out whenever it's engaged in battle, especially during its rush attacks. This cry bolsters the attack speed of itself and its allies. 9 Inch Nails' other abilities include a radial blast that slows enemies, and a grappling hook that it can use to travel far distances, or hook enemies in to kill them up close. Oberon's name as a stand would be Into the Mystic, named after the song of the same name by Irish singer Van Morrison. Into the Mystic is both an offensive and supportive stand, using its sacred magic to punish its enemies while defending its allies. Its attacks involve smiting its enemies with a burst of light, stripping them of all their defenses, and forcefully lifting multiple enemies in the air to slam them towards the ground. And of course, Into the Mystic has powers to provide its allies with healing/protection. Its method of rejuvenating its allies is casting an aura that restores their health over time, and to give them more support, Into the Mystic can sanctify the ground around it with nature to remove any possible afflictions inhibiting them, while at the same time, inflicting nearby enemies with sickness and confusion. Zephyr's name as a stand would be Twisted Sister, named after the American metal band of the same name. Twisted Sister's power is manipulating wind currents to take out its foes, while also providing itself with more defense and speed. It's a lot like the stand Weather Report, although in this case it can only control wind. Twisted Sister has great maneuverability in the air, being able to propel itself both off the ground and mid-air in a gust of wind. While in the air, Twisted Sister can hover for an extended period of time, and if it sees enemies nearby on the ground, it can plummet towards where they are, dive bombing them. Twisted Sister can also attack foes with wind directly, such as firing bursts of wind towards enemies, which can either scatter them away or pull enemies into a cluster, and summon tornadoes to seek out and ravage foes. Lastly, to defend itself, Twisted Sister can surround itself in a shield of wind currents to redirect all incoming projectiles away from it. Hydroid's name as a stand would be Ocean Man, named after the song of the same name by American rock band Ween. Ocean Man is a pirate-themed stand with the ability to manipulate water to dispatch its foes. Its standard method of doing so is casting a barrage of water missiles to bombard its opponents. This water is also incredibly acidic, so much so that it can literally melt its foes alive. Ocean Man can also transform into the highly corrosive water and charge through enemies as a wave. Lastly, its ultimate attack is summoning a Leviathan-like beast with dozens of tentacles from its waters to grasp and viciously flail them around. And of course, its tentacles are highly acidic from the water. Or, as an alternate approach, Ocean Man could transform into the aforementioned beast to dispose of its targets. Mirage's name as a stand would be Mirage. Quite disappointing, I know. But in this context, it's referencing the album of the same name by British-American rock band Fleetwood Mac. Using the power of light, Mirage can create illusions and other light-based constructs to confuse, blind, and damage its enemies. Like its name suggests, Mirage can fool its opponents by projecting several holographic images of itself that all mimic its actions. The images cannot sustain any damage, but they can inflict a small fraction of Mirage's power. It is also very adaptable in both light and dark, receiving more power when bathed in light, and becoming almost impossible to spot when in the shadows. And as mentioned before, Mirage can create light constructs to stun or eliminate the enemy, such as jewels that attract nearby enemies, which either explode when placed in the light, or blind them when placed in the dark, and a prism that fires deadly lasers in all directions, before exploding into a blinding flash of light. Limbo's name as a stand would be Abracadabra, named after the album of the same name by the American rock group Steve Miller Band. A magician-themed stand, made apparent by its name, Abracadabra can make its enemies quote-unquote disappear by banishing them to its own alternate dimension. An alternate reality almost indistinguishable from the original, Abracadabra can move freely between the two. Any attacks from outside the material plane are rendered null and will simply pass through those inside. As such, this alternate dimension is essentially a safe haven for Abracadabra and its allies, while also putting trapped enemies at its mercy. This is especially true considering the fact that Abracadabra can freeze all enemies and projectiles within the rift. Lastly, Abracadabra can unleash a large burst of rift energy, creating a pocket dimension of the material plane that anyone can enter and exit, unless they're frozen in place by the rift. Mesa's name as a stand would be 38 Special, named after the American rock band of the same name. A sharpshooter stand, 38 Special rapidly guns down her foes with its 2 regulator pistols. It's like if the stand Emperor was given a humanoid form, along with more abilities and an extra pistol. 38 Special auto-locks and repeatedly shoots any target within its field of vision, slowly increasing its damage and fire rate the longer it shoots. It can also store the damage done by its firearms into one devastating kill shot, potentially decimating the enemy with one bullet. 38 Special's other abilities include releasing a lasso to jam any sort of projectile weapon within its range, and protecting itself with a reflective shield, returning any projectiles sent towards its way back to the enemy. Chroma's name as a stand would be Dragon Attack, named after the song of the same name by the British rock band Queen. Now, while I did use Chroma's full image, he himself is not the actual stand, but rather a substitute for its user. To explain further, Dragon Attack is the exterior pelt embedded in Chroma's body, which he can shed, allowing it to transform into a sort of draconic sentry that blasts foes with the elements. In fact, this concept also doubles as another reference to the Queen song, specifically the lyrics "Got a dragon on my back." As for its abilities, Dragon Attack can breathe out a stream of various elemental attacks, or in other words, the 4 basic elemental damage types in Warframe: fire, toxic, electric, and cold. Lastly, it can also surround itself with an area of effect imbued of those same elemental energies to protect itself and its allies. Equinox's name as a stand would be Eclipse, named after the song of the same name by English rock band Pink Floyd. Symbolizing the duality of night and day, Eclipse can harness the power of both by switching between them in 2 separate forms. I even took the liberty of naming the 2, both of which are titled after Pink Floyd songs/albums. First, there's its day form, Let There Be More Light, which is an offensive stand focused on empowering itself and its allies, as well as weakening/eliminating the enemy. Its means of doing so is emitting various energies that buff allies, enrages enemies to make them more vulnerable, and bleed nearby foes before cutting them down with a violent slash. Then, on the other side of the spectrum, we have Eclipse's night form, Dark Side of the Moon, a defensive stand centered on protecting itself and its allies. Its methods are similar to Let There Be More Light, emitting auras that reduce incoming damage, put enemies to sleep, or increase their defenses with each enemy killed. The operator's name, just in the context of Jojo, would be Player, named after the American rock band of the same name. The main protagonist of this hypothetical crossover, I guess, Player, or the Player, is a child with mysterious powers, obtained from an entity with unknowable power. The main facet of these powers is that it allows the player to wield any stand in existence. They can only use one stand at a time, but they're also able to switch between different stands whenever they want. This ability is very similar to the discs that the stand Whitesnake can create, although in this context, it'll probably be a different mechanism, but I haven't figured that part out yet. The name for this ability is simply named Untitled, which could reference a number of possible songs or albums. Aside from that, the player does have other abilities, such as teleporting, turning invisible, and firing energy beams from their hands. In a similar vein, we have the Drifter, who in the context of Jojo would be named Passenger, or The Passenger, referencing the song of the same name by the American singer Iggy Pop. The Passenger is an older version of the player from an alternate timeline where they were trapped in an endless time loop by a mad king. Eventually, they free themselves from the torment, and later assist the player in their adventures. They have the same powers as the player, however the Passenger does possess some unique aspects. For one, they can summon their own flying horse creature, which I've appropriately dubbed a horse with no name after the America song. Lastly, the Passenger can create a time loop of any period in time, an ability they acquired after freeing themselves from the loop. This ability I've dubbed Round and Round, named after the song by the American rock band Rat.